The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good morning, everyone. Andrew Zimmerman here at the National Weather Service in Wakefield, Virginia with our Monday weekly briefing. Got some quiet weather to start the week, but we do look at some opportunities for some more active weather as we go through the week. But starting here today, we have high pressure over our local region here, as you can see in the visible satellite image. Got clear, the sky's clear. We do see well off to our northwest, more up toward the Great Lakes. We see that there's a cold front up here. That cold front's going to affect our region by the time we get to the middle of next week. And you can also see here by a lot of this cloudiness coming from the Atlantic and even from the Gulf, indicative of some moisture down here in the deep south. So it does look like this front will have some moisture to work with. Just kind of keeping up with the season here, looking out at the more of a view over the Atlantic and the tropics. There is just one tropical wave out here in the open Atlantic that's being monitored, but we'll briefly touch on that later. That's not looking to be much of a threat to our region, but just kind of keeping with the season here and looking at the tropics, as we still are kind of here at the tail end of the peak of tropical season. Going over here, looking at kind of the highlights for the week. Again, kind of as I mentioned, it's going to be nice and still dry and warm today into tomorrow. We're going to see, temperatures on the warm side for the time of year, but not overly hot either. Generally upper 70s to lower 80s. That cold front that I already mentioned, that's comes through Wednesday. Does look like we could get a widespread 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch of rain with that. So that definitely be beneficial, as we have been kind of dry recently. We are going to see cooler temperatures arrive with that cold front. So as we get into Thursday, especially Thursday, Friday, could just see highs in the 60s. And depending on how the high actually sets up by Friday morning, it is certainly possible that if areas like the Eastern Virginia Piedmont, especially northwest of Richmond, up toward Louisa, that area, maybe down toward Farmville, it is possible we could see some lows in the upper 30s by Friday morning. So definitely it does look like we get a taste of fall later in the week. But as that cold front comes through our area and then kind of stalls just off the southeast coast, there is actually a good bit of model guidance is now showing a coastal storm developing along that boundary as we get late Friday into the weekend. So that'll be something to look at as we get into next weekend. A little far out for details at this time, but certainly something to monitor for next weekend. Our RIP current program is still ongoing for those with coastal interest. That's going to continue. We're going to continue to issue those RIP current forecasts through the week, but our plan at this point is to end the program for the season later this week, basically with a forecast for the Columbus Day weekend here, and then looks like we'll be done with the seasonal RIP current forecast for the winter, and then they'll come back in the May timeframe of 2026. So that's just kind of a brief note on our RIP current program there, that season's coming to a close. Looking at our marine weather, does look like for the next today, tomorrow, sub-small craft advisory conditions, but it does look like we'll have solid small craft advisory conditions with that cold front Wednesday, with the wind coming around to the northeast behind that cold front. Here's some of the weather forecast weather charts here. You can see as we get through Wednesday, the high moves offshore. We get the cold front coming through. That cold front settles offshore by Thursday. Strong high pressure building over the Great Lakes. That'll create a strong pressure gradient, and hence the strong northeast winds we're looking at behind the cold front. And then, as you can see there on the chart, by Friday, it is showing some development of low pressure off the southeast coast along the front, with the high remaining to our north. So it really kind of looks like a question of how that system develops. Does it stay offshore, or does it kind of come up the mid-Atlantic coast? There you can see, I mean, this is rainfall forecast. This is kind of our scales here dictated showing a ½ inch to an inch, but kind of reiterating here, generally looking at like the 3/4 or 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. And you can see the highest chances of rain early Wednesday through the afternoon, progressing northwest to southeast across our local area. Could hear a few rumbles of thunder, but we're not expecting widespread thunderstorms. But we definitely could hear some thunder on Wednesday. Looking at the more broader outlook here for rainfall, I'll specifically focus more on next weekend here. There's still a lot of spread amongst the model guides of how much rain we get. If that low eventually stays close to the coast, could see some higher rainfall amounts. If it stays a little offshore, we'll obviously see less rain, or it concentrated more toward the coast. So there's still a good bit of uncertainty about rainfall with the coastal system next weekend. There's our moderate rip current forecast for today, kind of stepping down tomorrow with the low for the southern beaches, but moderate for the northern beaches. Here's the tropical wave that's being monitored out there. Currently, the National Hurricane Center has, pretty high chances of development over the coming days, but most guidance does keep this system well offshore. So not expecting any direct tropical threats to our local area within the next 7 days. Looking ahead, as we move to next week, are favoring above normal temperatures and still kind of near to above normal precipitation for next week. Coastal flood threat, mainly as you see the areas there up around like Dorchester County, Maryland, that's kind of more for the like low end minor flooding for southerly flow ahead of the cold front. And then as you see down toward, the portions of along the lower Chesapeake Bay, lower James River, coastal Atlantic there, south of Cape Henry, that would be chances of minor tidal flooding with the northeast wind behind the cold front. And we are also going through a period of king tides this week, so astronomical high tides are going to be on the high side to begin with. So it's not going to take much to get minor flooding. But this is primarily looking at Wednesday and Thursday. We're not looking at anything in detail for next weekend just yet, but it will, depending on how that low develops, we'll definitely need to monitor coastal flooding potential as we get into next weekend. Looking at our marine threat, you can see there the highest as we get into when particularly later Wednesday night, and then into Thursday. Our peak wind gusts look to be in the 30 to approaching 34 knot range. So it looks like solid small craft conditions and just below gale force for the passage of the cold front. And move through some of these tables rather quickly, but you can see here with the wave heights potentially, especially with the northeast wind, could see some 7 to 10 foot seas over the coastal Atlantic, and some of those higher waves getting into the mouth of Chesapeake Bay as well. So again, favorable northeast wind for building seas. And you can see, potential the occasional wave height there could be potentially up toward 12 feet. So definitely looking at potential for some rough seas behind the cold front Thursday. But again, keeping in mind how that coastal system develops by next weekend, we could definitely see potentially see some even higher seas, depending on how those details eventually work themselves out. Looking ahead to next weekend, again, as I want to kind of reiterate, not getting into a whole lot of details, but this probability of this is 39 miles per hour, so 34 knots, so gale force wind. This is a 24-hour probability ending 2 p.m. Sunday. And as you can actually see here over the ocean, based on the European ensemble model guidance, is 60 to 80% chance of 34 plus knot wind gusts at this time. So I mean that's pretty decent confidence at this point, for at least for the wind aspect. Rainfall aspect's a little more uncertain, but wind aspect is, I mean, that's pretty high confidence at this time range, and that extends into the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. But I would expect that maybe to nudge up the Chesapeake Bay as well, just a little less resolution up here. So basically, this is pointing to, I mean, a distinct potential for some at least gale force conditions over at least the coastal Atlantic waters and the lower Chesapeake Bay, as well as especially right along the shoreline here, potential for some stronger wind as well. Less wind potential once we get farther inland into the I-95 corridor, and especially out into the Piedmont. So that's kind of what we're looking at for next weekend there, wind-wise. Looking ahead, kind of touching on the tides here before we conclude. These are astronomical tide predictions for Sewell's Point. This here would be late Wednesday morning. Astronomical high tide of 3.6 feet. Our minor flood stage for Sewell's Point's 4.5. So Wednesday and then Thursday, especially thinking about that northeast wind Thursday, it's only going to take a foot, basically a foot of surge to get into minor flood. So it's, with these king tides coming up this week, it's not gonna take much to get into minor flooding with that northeast wind. As we move into next weekend, we do see these higher high tides do fall off, but it's still, the astronomical tide prediction is still 3.4 feet. This would be early Saturday afternoon. So I mean, 1.5 to 2 feet of surge would easily take that into minor flood stage and encroach on moderate flood stage for Sewell's Point, which again 5.5 feet. We see that fall off again a bit on Sunday, but it's still relatively high. It's just, it doesn't look as high, but it's still relatively high overall. I guess I should say it doesn't look as high based on the highest king tides there, but it's still as a whole very high, and it's not going to take a whole lot of surge there to get well into minor flooding. But so again, really kind of something to keep in mind as we go into next weekend. And as we move through, right now our next scheduled briefing will be Thursday, but we'll update our briefings online as we go through the next couple days. Should start getting some more confidence on how that storm, some of the details of that storm as we move through the week here. But again, kind of in conclusion, there is a lot of model guidance that is indicating some extent of low pressure development right along the southeast and southern mid-Atlantic coast as we get into next weekend. So with that, I will conclude the primary briefing portion, and I will be happy to take any questions that anyone may have. And feel free to drop them in the chat or ask verbally.